And welcome to this meeting of the Council. I am Councillor Paul Ekpenyong, Chairman of Mid-Suffolk District Council, and I will be chairing the meeting today. Before the meeting commences, I would like everyone to join me in a minute's silence to commemorate International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is today, and pay tribute to the memory of the victims of the Holocaust. Thank you. May I first of all remind you of some domestic arrangements. The toilets are situated outside the meeting room opposite the stairs. Cold water is also available in the breakout area outside the meeting room. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meeting on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you are told it is safe to do so. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent. I would like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed except where there are confidential or exempt items. If you make a representation to the meeting, you will be deemed by the Council to have consented to being filmed. By entering this meeting, you are also consenting to being filmed by the Council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The Council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. Finally, can I remind all councillors to speak directly into their microphones and refrain from covering the microphone with their papers when speaking. So, with that, I will move to the agenda. And to begin with, can I ask all councillors to ensure that their questions and debate are succinct, to the point, and not a repeat of other questions and comments that have preceded them. I'm going to be allowing approximately 45 minutes for each of the motions that are tabled this evening, so hopefully that will be sufficient time if we crack on through the agenda as I've indicated. And I do obviously want to make sure that we have a fair and reasonable debate. It will also be my intention at approximately the 2-hour mark for us to take a short break. So with that, we move to the first item on the agenda, please. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. I have received apologies for absence from Councillors Field, Guthrie, Brewster and Humphreys.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest by councillors? I see none. Councillor Mellon.
Thank you, Chair. On page 31, it says that the business of the meeting was concluded. My understanding was that the meeting was adjourned, so I'm not sure if that is correct. Thank you, Chair.
So Councillor Mellon, I'm informed it should be adjourned, so we will make that correction. Thank you. Councillor Warboys?
Yes, Chair. On page 20, I'm described 25B 28. It says I gave examples of the devastating effects of gambling. I didn't give specific examples. What I did say was along the lines of that for many people, gambling was a relatively harmless activity, but for some, the effects of gambling addiction were devastating. And the rest, it was therefore important that the council sent a strong message. I think my exact words were, drew a line in the sand, but right, could that be corrected?
Sure.
Thank you.
Are there any other issues with accuracy? In which case, could I have a proposer for the minutes, please? Councillor Haddingham. And a seconder, please, Councillor Matheson. Thank you. I will now ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to... Oh, we're not doing that, are we? We're going to have a show. We're going to do this one by a show of hands, I beg your pardon. So all those in favour, please show. Thank you very much. That's carried. So that takes us then to item number 4. This is paper MC/21/18. This is to confirm the minutes of the extraordinary meeting held on the 18th of October 2021. And again, it's for accuracy only. Are there any issues with accuracy? Councillor Mellon.
Thank you again, Chair. Can I just query the fact that it's listed as an extraordinary meeting? I understood this was actually just a continuation of the previous meeting. Thank you.
Chair, that was called as an extraordinary meeting to complete the business, so it was outside of an ordinary council meeting. So that we only had those, because it's classed as an extraordinary meeting, because those were the only specific items we had on the agenda for that meeting. So it was outside of the normal ordinary meetings, and if it was a normal council meeting, we would have had other items on the agenda for that.
Okay. You satisfied, Councillor Mellon?
Yes, thank you.
Super. Are there any other issues with accuracy for those particular minutes? Okay, can I have a proposer, please? Councillor Muller, and could I have a seconder? Councillor Passmore. And again, can we do this by a show of hands? All those in favour? Right, that is carried. Thank you very much indeed. So that takes us to item 5. This is paper MC/21/19, Chairman's announcements. So you will have that paper in front of you. I guess from my point of view, it was good to see several of you at my civic service, which we held at the Salvation Army in Stowmarket. And that particular event raised over £300 for each. And to date, we've actually achieved just over £1,100 and counting. So thank you all for your support. Item 6 is the leader's announcement, so I would like to invite Councillor Morley to present her update. Councillors, this item is not for debate. Councillor Warboys?
Sorry, Chair. Can I come back to Chairman's announcement, please?
Sure.
Did you actually receive a response to your letter requesting that the message should be excluded from the voter ID measure be excluded from the elections bill? I noticed you wrote the letter, and thank you for that. But did you receive a response?
Councillor Warboys, I regret to inform you that the minister has yet to respond.
I beg your pardon, I didn't... So, yeah, there's been no response.
No, yeah.
Beg your pardon.
Okay. Right, so we're back to item number 6. This is the leader's announcements. I would like to invite Councillor Morley to present her update. Councillors, this item is not for debate, and any questions apart from points of clarification should be directed to Councillor Morley outside of the meeting. So, Councillor Morley, please.
Thank you, Chair. I realise we're fast approaching February, but I would like to start by wishing you all a Happy New Year. I would also like to take this opportunity to publicly thank Councillor Wendy Turner for all her service to the residents of her ward and the council. As you all know, Wendy resigned over the Christmas period.
I'm sorry, Councillor Morley. Councillor Eburn?
Sorry, Chair, but you did ask that people don't speak with their things over the mic, and it's quite difficult to hear because Councillor Morley's got a very quiet voice, so if you could move your laptop to the side and speak a bit nearer, that'd be really helpful. Thank you.
I would like to take this opportunity to publicly thank Councillor Wendy Turner for all her service to the residents of her ward and the council. As you all know, Wendy resigned over the Christmas period as she is relocated elsewhere in the country to be with her wider family. I'm sure you will all join me in thanking Wendy and wishing her the best for the future. Of course, that does mean we have a by-election on the 17th of February, and I am sure we will all see much more of each other, pounding the streets and knocking on doors between now and then. It was only October, but it feels like a lot longer since we were last all together like this in the council chamber. Of course, that was before Omicron took hold, and it is fantastic that we are now able to begin to operate slightly more normally again. Personally, however, I would like to encourage all of our residents to continue to be mindful of COVID. I will, for example, still be washing my hands regularly, using hand sanitizer and wearing my mask in crowded spaces, even though I'm not obliged to do so. We have fantastic communities and community spirit in Mid-Suffolk, so I'm sure everyone will continue to look after each other and keep one another safe. And of course, doing so means we will also be able to keep our services going and enable the economy to bounce back stronger. I know none of us want to become more familiar with more of the Greek alphabet anytime soon. Whilst I'm talking about COVID, I would also like to put on record my personal thanks and that of all councillors for all of the work of our own teams and also the other parts of local government, health and all the volunteers that mobilised to deliver so many booster jabs in such a short period of time. It has undoubtedly helped us come through this wave of Omicron more quickly and with fewer people getting seriously ill or dying. You are all incredible people. As always, our continued thoughts and prayers are with the families and friends of those who have tragically died from COVID and also with those who are living with long COVID. Please can I encourage all those who are eligible, whether for your first, second, booster or even fourth jab, to make sure you get it as soon as you can. I would also like to encourage all eligible businesses to make sure they are accessing the financial support that is available from us to help them through Omicron. Since our last council meeting, the council has issued 31 press releases which you all receive and are on our website, and we have published 3 councillor updates and town and parish briefings. So I'm not going to spend time repeating all of that information, but I do want to celebrate a few of them. So in no particular order, Gateway 14 has been officially designated as part of Freeport East, and we can look forward to the infrastructure works starting on site shortly. The new visitor centre and cafe at Needham Lake has had its topping out ceremony, and we are looking forward to the Duck and Teapot opening very soon. We are continuing to develop new affordable housing, and so it was great to see 8 more new homes being finished and occupied in Needham Market at our former HQ, with all of those 8 people being able to move in before Christmas and have their first Christmas in their new home. We've made significant progress against our climate change and biodiversity ambitions, as councillors were hearing about at the briefing last week. It was amazing to see our officers pulling out all the stops to get the Woolpit GP car park built in record time to support the COVID vaccination programme. Our new 4-day Curiosity Festival was launched in Stowmarket during October half term, with a series of different events for 9 to 19-year-olds that offered practical tips and guidance on different career paths, as well as hands-on experience and workshops to provide a taster of the media, tech and creative job opportunities available locally. And of course, we have continued to help our residents in a number of other ways, including the holiday and food funded schemes for children through half-term and over Christmas, and the launch of our new iPad lending scheme with Suffolk Libraries as part of our digital skills work. And finally, I'm really proud that Cabinet was able to sign off the additional £5.1 million worth of investment for a range of projects to boost the district's recovery from the impact of the COVID pandemic. Councillors will recall that the ideas for this were developed together through the detailed councillor workshops in the summer last year, and we are now looking forward to seeing the impact of these investments for our residents during 2022 and 2023. And finally, I want to mention the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. A huge number of events are planned across the district and the whole county throughout the year as part of the new Festival of Suffolk. And so I would encourage all councillors and residents to look out for these and more local events so that we can make 2022 a year-long celebration. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Morley. Councillor Eburn.
Chair, may I raise a point of order, please, to the monitoring officer, because you stated that we couldn't ask questions of the leader, which is a change for we've always been able to ask questions at this point in time, especially when we have not prepared. So firstly, for that. And secondly, you say we can email questions, but we haven't had responses to questions from the last council meeting. So I would like some kind of confidence that we will get questions answered. If the monitoring officer could respond, I'd appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eburn. Monitoring officer.
Thank you, Chair. First, I'd just like to emphasise the principle that as Chair of this meeting, you have discretion about how to manage questions and debate. But I believe the situation remains that questions for clarity on the announcements that have just been read out are permitted. It's just a restriction on any outside questions outside of the announcements, which of course should be directed to Councillor Morley outside of the meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Emily. I guess really I ought to encourage the Cabinet to make sure that they do respond to questions, please. Councillor Morley.
Councillor Eburn, if you think there's something we haven't replied to, just drop me a line and I'll check out for you.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Scarf.
Thank you, Chair. It's a point of order again. The leader actually referred to the no necessary to wear masks, but the protocol for this meeting does say, and if I've got it right, it is recommended that face masks are worn at all times inside the building whilst you are moving around unless exempt. And obviously, if you're speaking, to remove your face mask. I do wonder, actually, whether members should actually consider their position on that. We are not out of the pandemic yet. In fact, cases in Suffolk and indeed in Mid-Suffolk are still slightly rising. I wondered whether the leader had got a response to that.
Councillor Morley.
I'm not sure there is a response to that. The guidance is that we don't have to wear masks, and I said that I will be wearing a mask.
That is what she said. Right. In accordance with council procedures.
Thank you, Chair. Be advised that we have received the following validated petition, 132 valid signatures regarding planning application DC 210633, land off A14 Elmswell. This is a planning petition and will be dealt with through the normal process. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to item number 8, questions by the public in accordance with council procedure rules.
None received, Chair.
Thank you. So we'll move then to item number 9, which is questions by councillors in accordance with council procedures. Members, I refer you to the questions in the table papers. I would like to invite Councillor Otten to ask her question.
My question is to Councillor Richardson. The decision of the Chancellor to axe £20 universal credit uplift on October the 6th, 2021 has left many people in mid-Suffolk struggling to meet the costs of rising energy bills, and many low-income families will be hit by the increase in national insurance from April 2023, plus the rising cost of living. We recognise the extra money that the Chancellor has made available, but that still leaves many seeking to advice. What is Mid-Suffolk doing to help and support those individuals and families who are facing financial difficulties?
Thank you. I'd like to invite Councillor Richardson to respond.
Thank you, Chair. There are a number of points to mention in response to Councillor Otten's very important question, not least because it touches on several Cabinet portfolios. At a local level, services consisting of communities, customer services, housing and wellbeing are currently working together to develop a seamless system that will enable us to better understand trends across the district and provide targeted support where it is needed most. The County Council are also bringing together a range of stakeholders from across the districts to form a poverty board. This will help us to bring resources, understand issues and implement joint initiatives to manage the impact of the emerging crisis. Moreover, Mid-Suffolk also provides advice centres with a 3-year core grant provision to ensure there is longevity in providing support to people. This complements current housing and welfare support provision within the Council, so we already have established systems to provide support and advice to our residents. But we have also been going further in providing a range of initiatives and schemes to tackle the crisis and support local people. These range from tenancy support management, where our approach is one of support and the income officers look at each tenant individually, looking at the situation as a whole rather than just as the rent owed. That may involve signposting to other agencies that can assist, such as Citizens Advice, or referring to our in-house tenancy support officers who can help with maximising income, budgeting and negotiating with creditors. Similarly, as part of our shared revenues partnership, we will make the best use of our remaining discretionary housing payment budget, which supports customers whose rent is restricted for a variety of reasons. Similarly, our council tax reduction scheme also offers up to a 95% reduction in council tax for working age residents and a 100% reduction for pension age residents. Similarly, our household support grants, where new tenants are called by their rent officer within the first 2 weeks of their tenancy, helps to identify issues and provides greater support to tenants at an earlier stage. This is beneficial as it builds rapport with the tenants who get to know who they need to go to if they have difficulties with their rent, and also means we can assist with other benefit claims earlier or on help with referrals for debt. Alongside positive interventions locally, we also support people to cook healthier meals. The Department for Education have committed to 3 years funding for the Holiday Activity and Food Programme, which provides free activities and meals during school holidays to young people who are eligible for free school meals. And as councillors know, we've extended that into the half term as part of the £1 million wellbeing pot. Staff at both Babergh and Mid-Suffolk are coordinating this programme, making sure that it's available to those families that need it most. And the family park cooking sessions are a great example of this, whereby families are encouraged to cook inexpensive, healthy meals together and minimise food waste. In addition to the support we provide to individuals themselves, Mid-Suffolk's community grant schemes are administered on our behalf and provide funding to voluntary and local community groups that support residents, often those with specific needs, with over £500,000 spent in this financial year already. So in summary, to Councillor Otten's question, I want to provide assurance that the cost of living crisis is absolutely on officers' radar, and they are preparing for the intersectional impact on individuals and families facing financial hardship. The funding from the Chancellor, as Councillor Otten quite rightly says, is welcomed, but the focus must be on supporting people into well-paid work whilst providing a safety net to prevent people from falling into crisis. That's why working with a breadth of organisations is absolutely crucial in connecting a coherent local system that works for people across our districts. And finally, Chair, as the leader has already indicated, as this is the first question in the first full council of the new year, I want to reiterate I'll take this opportunity to reiterate our commitment to delivering for our residents, with our new performance framework covering our 6 strategic priorities, supported by enablers, our key enablers like finance, investment and planning. We are in a strong position to respond to what will be a difficult few months for many. We know that with rising inflation, with the aftermath of COVID, our residents will be faced with numerous challenges. But I passionately believe that this is the year Mid-Suffolk can rise to meet those challenges and support our residents and our communities. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Otten, would you like to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure your mum would be delighted with that political statement, Councillor Richardson. Yes, so supplementary on that question. I have been made aware of an elderly couple. One has just finished chemotherapy. The gentleman is in his 90s. They had no way of knowing how to access all of those things that you have just mentioned, other than ringing me up. I have been able, in fact, to give them a form for surviving winter. I've been able to give them the telephone number for the CAB. So my question is, can you assure me that all of those people that need that help will know exactly where to get that help from? And will the council make a supreme effort to publicise all of the help that may be available? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Richardson?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, of course. We need to do absolutely everything we can to ensure that the support available from the District Council is well publicised and is accessible for all people in our communities. And if Councillor Otten is happy to give myself or officers the details of this individual case, we'd be more than happy to look into it. The only thing I would mention is that obviously if residents do contact councillors, they are more than welcome to forward that information about specific cases to myself or to our Communities and Wellbeing team. As far as I'm aware, we've not been notified about this case, but members can give officers that information directly rather than waiting until asking a formal question for council.
Thank you. I would now like to invite Councillor Mellon to ask his question.
Thank you, Chair. It's a question for Councillor Whitehead. During last year's budget discussion, the Council agreed to set aside £4 million for specific project areas to be agreed by all councillor workshops. And subsequently, as we know, Cabinet agreed in November the allocation of £5.1 million to the identified priorities. How much of this money will have been spent by the end of this current financial year? Thank you.
Councillor Whitehead?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Councillor Mellon, for your question. I appreciate the time that's been taken to get to a point where we are starting to spend these large sums of money. But this is public money. We wanted a cross-party consultation. We hoped for a consensus. And most importantly, we wanted to establish a well-thought-through, coherent suite of plans. And now I feel we are there. It should be and will be full steam ahead. As you know, there is a comprehensive set of initiatives that are supported by the 5.1 million and will be delivered over varying time periods. They were at different stages of development when Cabinet made its decision back in November, and there are different delivery models for achieving the outcomes that are being put in place. As an example, a number of them require the recruitment of additional fixed-term staff, which I'm pleased to say is happening, but it means that the level of spend in this year will be limited by when the successful candidates can take up their roles. Of course, when one embarks on new projects and initiatives, it is difficult to predict at precisely what rate they will spend. Our managers have made an assessment of what they think is likely to be spent by the end of March, and based on what they currently know, this stands at somewhere between £250,000 and £300,000. But I know this figure will be considerably higher during next financial year as the activity increases. When the allocation of the money was approved, the report outlined that expenditure would be reported to Cabinet on a quarterly basis as part of the General Fund monitoring report. That's as we do with the Growth and Efficiency Fund. So this is where you will be able to see the detail in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Mellon, would you like to ask a supplementary?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Very grateful for that response. But does he think that the commitment to spend the 5.1 million would be enhanced if it came with a detailed timetable for the spending. Thank you.
The cabinet paper, which I think ran over about 6 pages, I think it had somewhere between 49 and 51 bullet points. As I kept counting, they did change, but 51 projects, it's a great deal of detail. I mean, some of those are 4-figure amounts, some of those are 6-figure amounts. And each one of those has been assigned to an assistant director, a corporate manager, and as I say, as far as I'm concerned, as this recruitment goes through, it's full steam ahead, and all of those are seen as valued projects and need to be delivered as soon as possible.
Thank you. I would now like to ask Councillor Eburn to put her question.
Thank you very much, Chair. I hope the answer to my question will be a little bit more succinct. My question is, since September 2020, individuals can claim £500 from the Self-Isolation Support Payment Scheme if they cannot work due to self-isolation in COVID. What percentage of claims received have been paid, and how much government funding is the Council still holding? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you again, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Eburn, for your question. As succinctly as possible, as at the 23rd of January 2022, Mid Suffolk had received 493 applications. Of these, 137 have been paid, 296 have been refused, and 60 are still awaiting a decision. The percentage, therefore, that have been paid from the 433 that have been determined is 32%. In terms of the funding that we are holding from the government, our initial allocation was 126,500. So with the 137 payments made to date, we currently have £58,000 remaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whitehead. Councillor Eburn, would you like to ask a supplementary?
Thank you, I will, Chair, and I really appreciate Councillor Whitehead's succinct response. Thank you. Can I just ask what, that's quite a low percentage, 32%, and I suspect that a lot of that is people, forms and unusual circumstances that people, aren't quite clear perhaps about how they need to claim it, what they need to do and so on. So I just wondered what help, because obviously, people who are claiming this money are in desperate need of the £500 due to their circumstances, and I just wonder what help we are providing claimants to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Perhaps not quite as succinctly, but these sort of funds are processed through the Shared Revenues Partnership Committee, Shared Revenues Partnership, and I sit on the committee that monitors that. And I think this may help, I hope, that an extract from the minutes on the 8th of September, and this is verbatim. Councillor Whitehead noted the self-isolation support scheme seemed to receive a large proportion of applicants from people who were ineligible, and that's what was the reason for this. The Shared Revenues Partnership Operations Manager explained that people who had heard of the scheme might make speculative claims, but reported the application process guided those who didn't qualify away from applying. So Councillor White had asked for reassurances that responses from claimants weren't being missed and their claims refused. The Shared Revenues Partnership Operations Manager confirmed that responses were not being missed and that claimants were given additional time to provide information. And I know I can assure her that the Shared Revenues Partnership staff are very diligent and very caring people, and really do go the extra mile to help these claimants.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we'll now move on to item Councillor Matheson.
Yeah, point of order, Chair. We are required to submit these questions 3 clear days in advance, which is to say last Friday. And it used to be the practice that the written answers were made available a few minutes before the start of the council meeting, and that seems to be no longer the case, along with the leaders' announcements as well. And it does seem to be part of an incremental process of making life more difficult to hold the administration to account.
I'm not sure what your point of order is, Councillor.
Sorry, to be clear, I'm asking the monitoring officer for advice on whether we should not be continuing to receive those answers in advance of the start of the meeting, if we've submitted them in advance by that number of days.
Chairman, I'm happy to answer that question, although not technically a point of order, because there isn't a procedure rule that governs the providing of responses to questions from either councillors or the public. The cabinet member or the chairperson or the leader who's responding can choose the format in which they wish to respond, and the critical part is that the question and answer is produced in full in the minutes, so that's printed verbatim in the minutes. Equally, with the leader's announcements, it is at the discretion of the leader as to when she wants to publish any announcements in advance, or whether she wishes to just give that on the night in the chamber. There aren't any procedurals that govern that aspect of the question and answer process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we'll now move to item 10 on the agenda. This is paper MC/21/20, Overview and Scrutiny Committee Report. I would like to ask Councillor Wellham to introduce this paper, which is for noting only.
That my microphone is working. Ah, this one is. Right. Thank you. Right, yes, so this report covers meetings in October, November and December last year. And all of these three meetings were joint meetings with Babergh members. I'd like to refer to the review of the Citizens' Advice. It has been a difficult 2 years for Citizens' Advice. Committee was pleased with the reassurance that Citizens' Advice had coped well and adapted to changing circumstances and extra workload through the pandemic. Funding continues to be an issue. You will see the recommendation to Cabinet that index linking be applied to their 3-year rolling programme of funding. A meeting of Mid-Suffolk Overview and Scrutiny took place 2 weeks ago. We don't have the minutes, and I'll just refer to a couple of points that were raised then because they are pertinent. We considered the General Fund and the HRA budgets and 4-year outlook. Also, we considered a call-in of a Cabinet decision in respect of the district's taxi licensing policy. The committee resolved that the matter be referred back to Cabinet for reconsideration. Yeah, my report is only for noting, but I'll be happy to try to answer any queries on the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wellham. Are there any questions for the Councillor? Councillor Eburn?
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Wellham, for your report. You've noted, Councillor Wellham, that the Overview and Scrutiny Committee said that the housing and the work between the Citizens Advice Bureau and housing could be improved. I wonder if you could elaborate on that, what exactly needs to be improved. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wellham?
Thank you, Councillor Eburn. Yeah, there are a couple of aspects there, but I think the most significant is Councillor Richardson, in one of his answers, referred to the joined-up working among housing officers to help residents in rent arrears. The proposal by Citizens' Advice was for council officers and shared revenue partnership officers to work together to take a single view of debt, in other words, rent and council tax. And Councillor Flatman assured the committee that she would ensure that was done. The other aspect was that there had been a suggestion from Citizens' Advice that they should jointly with Mid-Suffolk District Council fund an officer to help with the coordination. There didn't seem to be any plan for Mid-Suffolk to help with that, to jointly fund it, so Citizens' Advice have funded that post themselves.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mansell?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to ask Councillor Wellham, with respect to the resolution regarding a scoping of the provision of transport within the district, and I'd just like to know if there was any timescale on when this was likely to be taking place. Thank you.
Councillor Wellham?
Thank you, Councillor Mansell. We are about to start on that process. We haven't yet had, we had a meeting to scope what we would be doing, and we're planning to meet with the passenger transport manager from Suffolk County Council, who is keen to work alongside us, with us, for the benefit of Mid-Suffolk residents. Obviously, we won't be looking at the whole of Suffolk with him. He will be helping us as we're looking at Mid-Suffolk and what's available and what needs to be available in Mid-Suffolk. That first meeting with him is planned to be within the next fortnight or so.
Thank you, Councillor Wellham. That report, councillors, was for noting only, so we'll now move to item 11 on the agenda, which is in two parts. So we'll deal with item 11A first. This is paper JAC/21/10. This is the half-year report on Treasury Management in 2021-22. I would like to invite Councillor Muller to introduce this item and to move the recommendations in the report. It is a requirement of the Code of Practice on Treasury Management that Council formally notes the half-year position and that it was in accordance with the approved strategy and indicators. Therefore, although the recommendations are for noting, Council will still be required to vote. So, if I call on Councillor Muller, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. This is the Joint Treasury Management Report covering the position for the first 6 months of the financial year 21-22. It provides details of performance, effects of decisions taken during that period, and compliance with the Council's Treasury Management Policy. The report explains the factors affecting the strategy and activities, including the regulatory framework, economic conditions, interest rate, and liquidity risk. Interest rates during the year continued at very low levels, and the Bank of England base rate remained at 0.1%. The economic recovery from the coronavirus pandemic continued to dominate the first half of the financial year. The easing of restrictions boosted activity in the second quarter of the calendar year, helping push gross domestic product up by 5.5% quarter on quarter. The employment rate increased and economic activity rates decreased, suggesting an improving labour market picture. The annual CPI inflation rose to 3.2% in August, and the Bank of England now expects inflation to exceed 4% by the end of the calendar year, owing largely to developments in energy and goods prices. More specifically for our council, banking activities undertaken were within the daily bank account limits. The council reduced its debt by 9 million. All investment activities undertaken were in accordance with the approved counterparty list. The council's investment activities, including average returns, can be found at Appendix C of the report. Investment in funding circle has reduced as unallocated funds have been reclaimed and existing loans repaid. Investment reduced by 31,000, leaving the balance at 30th of September at 131,000. The council is compliant with the upper limits for interest rate exposure, and the investment activity undertaken for the half year was done so in priority order of security and liquidity over yield as prescribed in the Treasury Management Strategy. There are two recommendations on page 49 of our papers, 3.1 and 3.3, and I would like to propose those, and could I ask for a seconder, please? Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to second these.
Now move to questions. Councillors may ask as many questions as they wish. However, they must be relevant to the subject under discussion, and please can they be succinct and to the point. Councillor Otten.
It's on now. Yes, I'd like to ask a question, page 60, where it states, if I can find it on here, about the government's greening finance roadmap to sustainable investing. You've said here that you will be looking at that, and I would really like a commitment that we get some feedback from that. I believe that companies, particularly Aviva, have stated that they will no longer invest in any company or organisation that does not have. My question is, will you be taking this seriously, and will you be getting a feedback about what exactly you are doing in response to this government finance roadmap to sustainable investment?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you for your question, Councillor Otten. Yes, we would take this seriously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Mellon?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. On page 52 of the report, at paragraph 11.1, this is the section on environmental implications. It says that all council activities will need to be reviewed as part of the climate change task group. And I note that this wording is exactly the same for the last two reports. It does seem to indicate that there's an ongoing process of environmental review, but I'm aware that the climate change task group has not met, and I believe the work is seen to have been closed. So can we have some clarification on that paragraph, please?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your question, Councillor Mellon. I'm actually not a member of that particular group, and I would ask perhaps whether the Section 15 officer or the acting corporate manager for accounts would be able to answer that question, please. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Muller. Just looking at the report, I think Councillor Mellon is right.
Catherine, could you take the mask?
Sorry, looking at the report, I think Councillor Mellon is right. I think that paragraph has probably been in there for a previous report, and we do need to update it. So we will do that for the next Treasury Management report. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Eburn?
Sorry, Chair, I was jumping the gun for debate. Oh, if I can hold back.
Thank you. If there are no other questions, then we will move to debate. So, councillors will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. So, who would like to go first? Councillor Eburn.
Sorry, Chair, I just felt that it's a very difficult time during COVID times and so on, and I just felt that we should be thanking the finance team particularly, and obviously the chair of the committee for the work, particularly obviously the finance team and their advisors for the work that they're doing here. Because obviously it is, complex and ever-changing. So I just wanted to make sure that we did have a vote of thanks somewhere along the lines. And I would also hope that I heard that the officer stated that we were going to change the paragraph about the climate change task force. And I just hope that this Treasury management is being reviewed in some way with regard to the climate change emergency that we all voted on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eburn. I'm sure with regard to the first part of your commentary that we would all fully endorse that, and I'm sure we can show our appreciation in a normal manner for the work that the finance team have been doing. Yeah, okay. Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak on this? Councillor Geek?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry, I think this might be a question. Am I allowed to pose it? I won't expect an answer, but am I allowed to pose a question?
Can I make a suggestion, Councillor Geek? As we've passed question, can you send your question
I'll
in?
give my opinion in that case. The risk register at 8.2 says that the likelihood of poor return on investments is probable. I feel that if we're probably going to get a poor return on investment, perhaps the investment shouldn't have been made or should be rethought. That is my contribution to the debate, and no doubt somebody will be able to counteract me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Geek. Councillor Passmore?
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just wanted to say I do support the recommendation. this is perhaps a somewhat boring subject to look at. But what we do need to remember, and some of us can go back many years, like Mrs. Otten and one or two others of us, and in fact you've been on this council even longer than I have. But you know, what we have to do is safeguard public money. The point about risk that I think has just been made is important, but we always need to balance the issue of risk and the reliability of returns. Some will remember the rather wild expectations going back many years of high-risk investments in Iceland and so on. So I do think the Treasury team has got this absolutely right. I shall support the recommendation. And we've got to be very careful not to take undue risks with this sort of system, with what is public money. The returns are not very good at the moment, as we all know, but nevertheless, some return is a lot better than none, and trying to safeguard what we've got, albeit, of course, the value of it sometimes is being eroded by inflation. But I should be very happy to support the recommendation. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Passmore. Councillor Whitehead.
Thank you, Chair. It strikes me, looking at this risk description, that if the council achieves a better return on investments than planned, there will be better, more resources available to deliver services. And I suspect the likelihood is probable and the impact would be noticeable. So basically, you can't crystal ball where these returns will be. They could be better or they could be worse. So I think, just to Councillor Geek's point, whether it's better or worse, it's still probable and noticeable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, if there are no further contributions, then I would like to ask Councillor Muller if he wishes to add anything.
Thank you very much, Chair. Yes, I'd like to sort of take Councillor Eboy's point. I would like to pass on my sincere thanks to Catherine, Rebecca and the rest of the finance team for the incredibly hard work they've done through this very difficult period. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Muller. So I will now ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, could you please open the vote in the modern.gov app by clicking the plus sign in the top right hand of the agenda screen and selecting attendance and voting. For clarity, we are voting on 3.1 and 3.3 as recommendation 3.2 refers to Babergh. That vote is now open. Thank you. Councillor Wellham, can I take your vote, please? And Councillor Stringer? Oh, you're signed in now, sorry, thank you.
Thank you very much. So that is carried. We will now move on to item 11B. This is paper MC/21/21. Gambling Act 2005, Statement of Principles 3-yearly adoption. I would like to invite Councillor Muller to introduce this paper and to move the recommendation in the report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Councillor Guthrie apologises for being unable to attend tonight. Unfortunately, I myself was unable to attend that particular meeting through ill health, but Councillor Guthrie has sent me a report which I'll read out to you now. The purpose of this report is to ask Council to adopt the amended Statement of Principles as recommended by Mid-Suffolk Licensing and Regulatory Committee on the 3rd of December 2021. It is a statutory requirement to review and re-adopt the Council's gambling policy every 3 years. The decision to adopt the Statement of Principles may only be taken by Council and cannot be delegated to the Licensing and Regulatory Committee. A reconsultation exercise to include the no casino resolution was undertaken for a 28-day period and no responses were received. All changes to the policy are contained within Appendix B. The majority of amendments were purely administrative, with few changes that were as a result of the amendments to the Gambling Commissioner's guidance. The recommendation is that the draft Revision Gambling Act 2005 Statement of Principles document, as attached as Appendix A to this report, be adopted for publication and to take effect for 3 years unless sooner revised from the 31st of January 2022. And I would like to thank the licensing team for all their hard work during the reconsultation process of this exercise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Could I ask a proposer, please? I propose to have a seconder, please.
Can we have a seconder for Councillor Caston? Sorry, I was looking on. Oh, Councillor Geek. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second Councillor Murray. I was at the meeting on the 3rd of December, and I must say I'd like to echo his thanks to the licensing officers who've done a tremendous job, not just the standard, perfect work, but they make it so clear and so easy for us all to understand what's going on. I can thoroughly recommend this to all members.
Thank you, Councillor Geek. We will now move to questions. Usual process applies. So does anyone have a question with regard to this report? No? Okay. We'll move on to debate. Does anyone wish to begin? Councillor? Brain dead. Sorry, Councillor.
Yes. I was obviously disappointed that this has to come back to us for the reasons that I think are documented in our minutes. However, I would just like to add my sincere thanks to the team for the amount of work they've put in, and I agree with Councillor Geek. This is an excellent document and will stand us well for the next 3 years. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Councillor Fleming. Apologies for the brain hemorrhage there. Anyone else would like to say anything? Okay, in which case, Councillor Muller, do you wish to add anything further?
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to say thank you to Councillor Geek, who was present at that meeting, for her comments, reflecting the thanks for the team that actually did all the work. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So I would now like to ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now open in the modern.gov app. Please can you place your vote? Thank you. Councillor Wellham, can I take your vote, please? Thank you.
I'm afraid I'm in spasm. Can I take my vote as per will, please?
Thank you.
Sorry.
All right, that is unanimously, and so that is carried. So thank you all. We will move to item number 12. This is paper MC/21/22. This is the development of housing revenue account business plans. I would like to invite Councillor Haddingham to introduce this paper and to move the recommendations in the report. Councillor Haddingham.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This evening I'm pleased to introduce the report MC/21/22, the development of housing revenue account business plans. The housing revenue account, HRA, is the financial account used to manage our landlord activities. It is ring-fenced in the law and can only be used for providing services to council housing tenants through the collection of rents and charges. Other council services are funded through council tax and central government support, which benefit all citizens of Babergh and Mid-Suffolk regardless of tenure. The HRA Business Plan, which is in development, will set out our income and expenditure plans for delivering council housing services, as well as setting out our key council housing priorities for the forthcoming years, demonstrating how we intend to develop our services to meet tenants' expectations. This is timely work as we look to the introduction of the Social Housing White Paper, which sets out the actions the government will take to ensure that residents in social housing are safe and are listened to, live in good quality homes and have access to redress when things go wrong. The Building Safety Bill, which is the next step in groundbreaking reforms to give residents and homeowners more rights, powers and protections, making homes across the country safer. This will overhaul regulations, creating lasting generational change, setting out a clear pathway on how residential buildings should be constructed, maintained and made safe. This, alongside the introduction of our Council Outcomes Framework and the development of our new Build Design Guide and technical specification, as well as a midpoint review of our homes and housing strategy and associated action plan. During the past few months, we've been listening to our stakeholders to develop our approach to the plan. Members will recall being invited to respond to a survey, and we've also used last year's members' workshops and the work which centred on a stock take to contribute to the priorities we have established. This report sets out the approach that has been taken and identifies the areas of focus most important to everyone and will be incorporated into the plans. Over the next couple of months, we'll be finalising the plan with the intention of the final version of the HRA plan being presented to full council for comment shortly. Moving forward each year, the HRA business plan will be reviewed and updated to set budgets and charges for the year ahead, whilst providing an updated 5-year plan for our capital investment programme. I would like to propose the recommendations set out in this report and ask for a seconder. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As ex-portfolio for housing, I'm very pleased to support this paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. We will now move to questions, and councillors may ask as many questions as they wish. Again, please be succinct to make sure they're relevant to the subject under discussion, and they must be a question and to the point. Councillor Passmore.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Could I just ask, Lavinia, you mentioned there that the plan will be brought up shortly. I just wanted to ask, have you any idea of a timescale? And the reason I ask is because I think it's really, really important that it's done well. There's a lot in it. It's a really important service that we provide. And my personal view would be waiting an extra month, a few weeks, would be beneficial to make sure we get it absolutely right before it comes back to the council to discuss it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At the moment we're thinking April. Is that right, Gavin?
Thank you. Eburn.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the report, Councillor Haddingham. I think it will be a very good process to go through. One thing I want to ask is whether, sort of combining paragraphs 429, 430, which is about improving neighbourhoods, will that include, or if not, could we look at, we talk about sort of bits of open space in neighbourhoods that often get used for parking. You know, they're either extended bits of verges and then people use them to park on. And could we kind of do some kind of programme to either help people to, if they've got parking issues somewhere else for them to be parking, or actually using those pieces of land to plant trees or something else on to prevent parking. I mean, I've got several spots in my ward. I'm sure everybody can recognise this as an issue, but it's it's kind of two issues together, the parking and the use of the green spaces. So will this programme be looking at that and make sure that's incorporated? Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you. Yes, I'm sure we can look into that, can't we, Gavin? Thank you.
Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's just a quick point of clarification. On the top of page 148, paragraph 9.5, it talks about building more homes and encouraging under-occupiers. It seems to me there's probably a phrase missing there. I'm all for encouraging people, but I'm not quite sure what we're encouraging them to do there. Thank you.
Councillor Haddingham.
Sorry, thank you. I think it means under-occupiers. It should probably have a hyphen, I think that's what we're saying. It's just under occupiers who are not, you know, fully using all the bedrooms sort of thing. Is that right, Gavin? Sorry.
Sorry, yeah. The reference is obviously building, buying more houses, increases our supply, obviously meets the needs of those that are in need of accommodation. I think the important point to note from that comment, and apologies if it's not clear, we've got a finite amount of housing, and part of the plan will be to make best use of what we've got. That would be through encouragement and through support for individuals that may not want to downsize now, but may want to downsize in the future to maximise the existing stock we have.
Councillor Otten?
Yes, I'm interested to read the statement at 4.35 involving tenants in running the service and the development of an innovative governance model. I'd like to know whether the tenants on that model, whichever way it's developed, will they actually have proper voting rights in order that they feel that their time is spent constructively and are not just there as someone, you know, to just nod and be feel to be involved in the running of the service. I really think it's important, if you're going to do this, that they really feel that their time is spent properly. Thank you.
Councillor Haddingham?
Thank you, and thank you for your question, and I'm sure we will take it on. Like you said, we want our residents to feel they're being listened to, our tenants to feel they're being listened to, and that their points are valid, and we will certainly take that on board. Thank you very much.
Councillor Warboys?
Thank you. Sorry, I'll just untangle myself a little bit. Thank you, Chair. Paragraph 9, digital transformation. Just a question about this. More and more of the council's businesses run online for efficiency purposes. At present, it's reported there's 28% of tenants that signed up to the My Home portal. The reason I'm raising this is 46% of staff said they actively promote digital channels to tenants. Shouldn't more staff be actively promoting this service to tenants so that all tenants are aware of that this is the means in which they can contact the council about the property, the tenancy? Thank you.
Councillor Haddingham?
Thank you. You were looking at Gavin, are you?
Yes,
yeah.
I beg your pardon, I should.
I'm sorry, I just
give you the chance to respond.
You know, I would say yes, you're right, but I'll ask Gavin if he would, or his opinion. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. These are obviously survey results. They're obviously taken in the context of the number of staff that responded, and obviously depending on roles and responsibilities, you might naturally assume that a housing officer spending quality time with a tenant might talk about how they manage their home and their tenancy, perhaps slightly differently to a plumber that's there to fix a leak. Clearly, we want to promote the benefits of digital use of the tools that are available, if that provides efficiencies and improves the service that tenants receive directly. So yes, we will be looking to ensure that staff promote not only digital transformation and digital transformation of the landlord service, but promote all the opportunities, promote the opportunities to be part of the landlord service, having a say in the say where it's just been discussed.
Chair, yeah, if we could return to the under-occupancy problem. The people who are most likely to be in that situation of under-occupying, and I'd be interested if officers have got any information about the extent of the problem within the housing service. But my question really is, are we putting enough resources into helping people to move, because those people are the least likely to have the capacity to organise their own moving, and when you think about it, the cost of providing an extra couple of bedrooms, additional bedrooms somewhere, is huge, and the cost of actually releasing a couple of bedrooms in an owner-occupied house is far less, even if we put much more effort into it. So can we focus more effort than we already are on that? And if it works well, I just wonder whether we should extend the service that we provide to the private sector, where there's lots more people under-occupying, who again are the ones that are least likely to have the ability to deal with it themselves. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, yes, I'll say we'll certainly put some more effort into it, but if you would like an answer from Gavin, then I will welcome.
Thank you. I can't give you any statistics tonight in relation to tenancy audits or the level of under-occupancy, partly because it's not been necessarily a direct focus of the landlord service in recent times, hence why developing the Hra Business Plan, we see it as an opportunity. I can tell you from experience that in the past, working for Babergh Suffolk, we have promoted the benefits of downsizing, because clearly if you're under-occupying, you're paying larger utility bills, etc., etc. And I can tell you about some lived experience in terms of a tenant that contacted me personally 8 years later because she'd kept the letter on the mantelpiece until the point that she felt comfortable to move. And I think that just demonstrates the approach that we need to take. This, in terms of developing an approach to under-occupancy, whether that be around incentivising, that incentives could be from carpets and decoration of the new home to that level of hand-holding that you described through the process, because for anyone moving, it clearly can be a traumatic and a big deal. So we need to focus on that, focus on what tenants need and would desire to benefit them, to move, and thus benefit us in terms of bringing those properties back into stock. So that will be the approach taken.
Thank you, Gavin. Councillor Masterson, do you have another question?
Well, yes, just to say, I think it would be very useful to know the extent of the opportunity that exists in that, and yes, the hand-holding is absolutely the part I'm talking about. Thank you.
Councillor Carter?
Thank you. Just a point to councillors, including Councillor Mattison. I didn't declare myself as a council tenant previously, but I am one, a council tenant. But we can't say that these people are the least able to do it. We are making methods to actually allow for to make it easier to swap homes. We have the provisions there. We are making the movements in the right direction. So
I'm sorry, Councillor, what is your question?
My question points to statements regarding that these people are least likely to. I'll retract my matter.
I suspect you don't have a question there, I'm afraid, so we'll move on. Councillor Wellen?
Thank you, Chair. My question is about the digital transformation. I have an uncle who's 94, and there's no way I'm ever going to persuade him to get an iPad or even to have Wi-Fi put onto his council bungalow. And he often asks me to do things on his behalf. Well, because I have to sign in and swear that I'm Mr. Finbow or whoever. What I wondered, the question is this: is it possible that one of the tenants who doesn't want to get involved in the digital transformation can appoint somebody to act on their behalf in signing up to My Home and so on?
Thank you. That's a very good question, and I think as a dutiful son, I think we've all frankly been there with our parents, but I'll pass it on to Gavin, his experience.
Thank you for the question. It's one that we deal with now, whether it be digital correspondence or perhaps written. So there is the facility and the ability to support a tenant to have an advocate acting on their behalf. And certainly with regards to the My Home portal, for which we've now got nearly 4,000 tenants signed up to that. So that gives them the ability to monitor their rent account receive an electronic newsletter from us on a monthly basis, there would be that ability to do that, provided the necessary checks and balances have been carried out to protect the tenant and the tenant's information.
Any other questions? Okay, well, in which case then we shall move to debate, and councillors have 3 minutes each to make their points. Did they want to kick off the debate? Councillor Mansell.
I didn't really want to speak first, but there you go. No one else seemed to put their hand up. I will be supporting this motion. I think it is a timely motion that we need to review our business plan for the housing revenue account. And I think that an awful lot of work has gone into it already. That it's great that we've got involvement from the tenants themselves, and we've done some extensive consultation. I think an awful lot of interesting points have been raised in the questions that other members have posed this evening. And I trust that these will be taken on board when it comes to the final business plan. And on the subject of under-occupancy, which has been raised by a couple of my colleagues, I think there are a couple of missing words in that statement. And I think that a lot of the issues that have been brought to my attention regarding under-occupancy is to do with the lack of smaller properties in the right places. That a lot of people have been living in their home, their large family home, for a long time. And yes, they want to downsize, but they want to stay in the same place. They want to stay in that village or town. You know, people in my ward don't want to be offered a 2-bed place or small place in Stowmarket. So I really hope that is taken on board. I think those actual issues were listed in priority, and it was reasonably high up in the ranking. So I really do hope that we can do more to help ease that situation. So I think that, in summary, I think this is a welcome move, and I really do look forward to seeing the business plan in due course, hopefully before April, so we've all got time to read it and digest it. And I'm looking forward to the debate and the discussion and the questions once we actually have the business plan in front of us. But I will be supporting this motion, which is to go ahead with the review of the HRA business plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mansell. I guess you mean the recommendations. Does anyone else wish to speak? Okay, if not, then I'd like to ask... I would like to ask the Corporate Manager Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now open in modern.gov. Please place your votes. Thank you. Councillor Wellham, can I take your vote? Yes. Voted for. Thank you.
Right, members, that's a unanimous vote in favour, so that's carried. So we will now move on to item 13. This is paper MC/21/23. This is the draft committee timetable for 2022-2023. I call on Councillor Morley.
Thank you, Chair. We published the draft committee timetable, and I'd like to ask you all to approve it. There is an update in the tabled papers with one minor change that actually relates only to Babergh and not to Mid-Suffolk. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Councillor Morley. Right, that's, we shall now move on then to item number 14. Have we got a vote on that?
We need a seconder and a vote.
Sorry about that. Can we have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Mellor.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to propose an amendment, actually, to the... Is that appropriate at this moment?
It needs to be seconded first. It has to be seconded first.
I believe we have to second first, then we can go on to the... Councillor Richardson?
Happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, so now we've got that proposed and seconded. We can go to Councillor Mellor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just reviewing the timetable, I note that Babergh District Council has 12 meetings scheduled for the next council year, while we have 7. And I'd like to propose that we have that we add in 2 reserve dates in June and October for extra meetings not currently on the schedule, so that we ensure that we cover the council's business in a timely fashion. Thank you.
So, do you have a seconder for that, Councillor Mellor?
Chair, I'd be very happy to second that. We've obviously had issues over the last year with meetings being cancelled through no fault of anybody's in terms of COVID and so forth, and then struggling to fit in other meetings. We've also had a meeting that has extended a very long time, and we didn't have weren't able to adjourn that to another meeting because we didn't have the space. So I think it would just be common sense, really, to put in 2 provisional meetings in June and October. Note we haven't said August or Christmas because we don't think that would be particularly popular. But if we could have just provisional meetings, so we've got them all in our diaries for June and October, and then that would help in terms of any changes to the current timetable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Eburn. I'll ask the Leader of the Council, Councillor Morley, to let us know if she accepts that or not.
It's a tricky one because I don't really want to put dates in the diary when we don't actually have council business to conduct. I don't feel strongly enough to oppose it, to be quite honest, but I'm not keen on spending council money if there is no business to be discussed. So I would like to know what other people think, actually.
Councillor Wellham?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's a very good idea that we have these dates in the diary. It's much better to have the dates in the diary and find that we've got too many meetings than it is to find that we've got too much business and we just don't know how we're going to fit them in. So we've got the dates in the diary. One of the other recommendations is a way of not holding meetings if there's no business. So why don't we just put the dates in the diary and then they're there, and we can keep those dates free, and it will mean that the chamber is booked. And I think that is important to have the chamber reserved on those particular dates, so that if we do need a meeting, it's there. If we don't need a meeting, we just don't have a meeting.
Councillor Hicks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think the problem we've got here is what we're being asked to decide today is the dates in the diary that is before us. So we can only agree to accept this, but if there's a provision to come back with other meeting dates, they would have to come back at a separate meeting with those exact dates for us then to vote to put into the calendar. So we can't really decide that today anyway. All we can decide is the dates that's on the paper before us. But that's for another day. I would suggest that what's being proposed is to be sorted out for another day.
Councillor Passmore?
Yeah, very quickly, thank you, Chairman. All I was going to say was, by all means, if we have a date provisionally, provided there was really something to do. I don't think for a moment anybody's suggesting having meetings for the sake of it. Clearly not. That would be futile. But I do think we need to have that coordination. I agree with Matthew's point that it needs to be looked at carefully. So I'm not against it. Don't take that the wrong way, please. But let's just think of it specifically. How would it work? And make sure. And I would make a suggestion, again for the others to decide. It should be at the chairman's discretion or some mechanism so that there is a way of making sure that it's legitimate, sensible business to do. And I know nobody's suggesting otherwise, but we just need to make sure it's done in the right way rather than decide it here and now, a date or anything like that. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Passmore. So I guess we move to vote on this particular item.
We need to go back to the proposer and seconder of the original motion to see if they accept the amendment.
Yeah. So, Councillor Morley, I think it's over to you to decide whether you accept the amendment or not.
I think, no, I don't. I'd rather we approved this as it is, but I will take away those two other dates and check, because we don't know whether the council chamber is available on those dates. So I will take those 2 June and October dates away, and we'll check, and we will come back if we can fit them in.
Councillor Mellon, do you wish to withdraw your amendment for the time being or not?
Chair, no. I think do we move to debate on that issue? I have a few words to say.
Yes, we can move to debate at this point. Thank you.
I just do ask members to bear in mind the situation we faced during this past year where we ended up on multiple occasions having to have a vote on the guillotine motion and extend meetings. It seems reasonable to me if Babergh are doing this, putting provisional meetings in into the timetable, and I haven't proposed specific dates, but I have proposed a kind of a month in which those meetings could take place. I feel certain that the chamber will be available on some days during those months. I think it would be sensible to have space in the democratic programme to debate and also just remind members that this forum is not just for the administration, it is for all councillors, and the sort of definition of whether there's enough business is not just about the administration's business, it's about whether councillors have questions for the administration or whether the opposition has motions they want to put forward as well. Those are also part of the business of the council. So I would ask members to support my amendment to add a couple of extra dates with the flexibility that they could be fitted in at an appropriate time. And I think that is a sensible way forward. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anyone else wish to speak?
Yes, thank you. I mean, I have a lot of sympathy with actually the suggestion for more meeting dates, because sometimes it's good fun to have a go at each other across the chamber. And, you know, I wouldn't want to miss that opportunity. But I'm not sure that the way, I haven't seen a written proposal here, and I would like it to be up to the chairman to decide whether sensible business is on the agenda and should be conducted. If it is, then by all means, let's have those 2 dates. But it should be the chairman's discretion.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Richardson.
Thank you, Chair. I think I would like to echo what Councillor Fleming and Councillor Morley have said. I mean, I wouldn't object to the kind of the key motivation behind this, which is to ensure we have those reserve dates in mind. I think obviously it's worth reflecting on the fact that we hope that the events of the last year won't be repeated, and so we won't be in some of those unique circumstances again. But I do think there's probably a little bit more work to do in terms of going away, ensuring that dates are mutually convenient for the officers involved, making sure we've got substantive business to take to those council meetings. And I do think, and this is a bit of a rhetorical question because I'm assuming the answer is no, that obviously these papers have been published for about a week. There would have been opportunities, I'm sure, for people to have got together to have suggested changes. I'm assuming the leader wasn't aware of this amendment until just now. There would have been opportunities. She's shaking her head, so that's a no. There would have been opportunities to come together, give us advance notice that this amendment was going to come forward, and then reach a mutually beneficial agreement. I think what we've said thus far is we're open to the idea, but we need a little bit more information first. So I think it's a shame we couldn't have done this before this meeting, but it is what it is, and I'm sure we can revisit the situation as and when we feel necessary to call additional meetings. That's my view.
Thank you, Councillor Richardson. Councillor Manson?
Thank you, Chair.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, did you say Mansell or Matheson?
Manson.
Thank you.
Sorry.
You have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I really don't quite know what Councillor Fleming and Councillor Richardson have got to object to this, because in essence they seem to actually be agreeing with the fact that it would be good to have some provisional dates for extra meetings. And I'd just like to come back on Councillor Fleming. We're not having a go at anybody, but I just think it's actually, I get your point. It's great that we can actually get together and discuss things. We're not having a go at one another. It actually makes me feel like I'm part of a council when I come to a council meeting. When I'm sat at home in front of a Teams meeting, I do not really feel part of that community. So I think it's good for us to get together as a group of councillors. We should all be working to the same aims. So we are here together in the chamber to make decisions about our communities. And I think there is absolutely no harm in having this motion. It is flexible enough. It just says within the months of June and October. We're not asking you to pinpoint exact dates when you might or might not be available, when the chamber is not available. We all know over the past few months, we have been sat in this chamber and I've almost missed the last train home. I do not like to be here until 10:15. Means I don't get home till nigh on 11 o'clock. We all have to go without a meal for the evening. We don't want long meetings. We don't want to have our motions put aside because they tend to be at the end of the agenda. They get put aside and we have to have an adjournment and an extraordinary meeting. And that was really difficult to put into the timetable. So there is absolutely no harm in putting these dates in the calendar as flexible dates. It gives us the flexibility. And we are not saying there has to be a meeting in June and October. It will, of course, be at the chair's discretion as to whether there is enough business to conduct. It just gives us that little bit of flexibility. What is the harm in it? So come on, let's all vote for it. It's not a big deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mansell. Councillor Matheson?
Yes. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I merely wanted to ask the monitoring officer to confirm that the Chair actually has the discretion already to cancel the meeting if it's not needed.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually the Chief Executive who has the authority to convene meetings as the proper officer for the purpose of issuing summons to the meeting. So it's actually the Chief Executive's decision whether or not to hold a meeting. But of course, he would have a discussion with the Chairman about the business that is to be conducted, or indeed the absence of business to be conducted, which would result in a decision to cancel a scheduled meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Geek?
Thank you, Chair. Just to add a little to Councillor Matheson's topic there. Over the last 3 years, we have experienced in this council an awful lot of the Chair's casting vote, where votes have been tied. Half of this council is the administration's party, half of the council is other parties. If I don't want anybody to think that we're moving to a system where the Chair is the person who decides, because that has not been shown in the past to be politically neutral. Shall I put it no stronger than that? It is really essential that the business of the council is the business of the whole council. It's not just the business of the administration.
Thank you, Chair. Just didn't want to make a meal of this, and in the pursuit of brevity, I just wanted to check that if we were to vote against this motion, under the 6-month rule, would that preclude us having council meetings then in June and October?
Emily? Is that? I don't know that's the case.
So the 6-month rule, councillors, would prevent you having another debate and discussion on having meetings in June and October. So you wouldn't be able to bring back another motion to request those, unless, of course, you had a third of the council who wanted to revisit that discussion within a period of 6 months. That being said, you always have the opportunity to request an extraordinary meeting under different provisions in the Constitution, and so therefore it would still be possible to convene a June or October meeting in another way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. As someone who's proud of my 100% attendance representing the residents of Claydon and Barham here in full council, and as someone who was planning to have a holiday in June, and as someone who has to negotiate with his spouse before that holiday can be arranged, to me, when I see this calendar and I put it straight in my diary, and then I tell my wife when we may be able to go on holiday, when we may not because I want to be here. So the sooner those dates, if there are dates in June and October, can be put in the diary, from my point of view, I'd be happy to see them there as provisional dates and get them in my diary, and so I support that. Thank you.
Councillor Warboys.
I do apologise, Chair, in advance for prolonging the discussion, but I'd like to ask everybody to vote in favour of adopting the proposed 2 meetings today, rather than put it off to a further meeting and prolonging the debate even further. Thank you.
Do you know, I'm just a bit, I don't think we're all kind of saying the same thing, but if you were really serious about this, your leader would have approached our leader 2 weeks ago and said, we've got this great idea, let's come to a conclusion, let's reach a decision. Unfortunately, you haven't, and I think you're just trying to play games on this. It's really disappointing that you can't actually do things and cooperate with the administration rather than just trying to hijack a meeting at the last minute. It's clearly just for a cheap gain, honestly.
A good idea is a good idea whenever it comes.
Right.
So we now need to go to a vote on the amendment.
Right, councillors, we're now going to go to a vote on the amendment. So we're getting all organised for that. Bear with us.
Chair, thank you. That amendment is now in blue. If you can vote on the amendment proposed by Councillor Mellon. Thank you. Councillor Wellham, can I take your vote? For the amendment, thank you. Councillor Flatman, are you okay to vote, or are you having problems? Not yet. Just let me refresh. Just a moment.
So if this is successful, that becomes the substantive motion. If it fails, go back to the original motion.
No, it's not coming through. So can I take it manually, please? Oh, has it? It has, yes, sorry. Okay. So, Chair, that is 19 for the amendment and 9 against.
So, members, that is carried. So that becomes the substantive motion.
Just go straight to the vote. Just go straight to the vote if the council's happy.
And then that's it.
No, straight to the vote on the substantive.
Oh, again? All right, okay. Okay, so now we have to go to a vote on the substantive motion. And
Chair, just 2 seconds. It's now coming live. Yeah. Chair, that is now amended. So if you'd like to place your votes, that is now showing in blue. Thank you.
Standing up and putting my microphone on. I'm very sorry. That was a bit of a surprise because the 2.2 we're also voting on. Is that correct? That says that the Chief Executive takes the decision as to whether there is enough business to have a meeting. Now, should that not say that the Chief Executive takes that decision in consultation with both sides of the council? I'm surprised that we haven't been able to discuss that. Thank you.
Debate the substantive motion if you want to allow that, Chair.
Sorry?
You can return to debate if you'd like.
Hang on.
Do you want me to respond? Is that my
Yeah, so can I ask the Chief Executive to respond? I note your... Councillor.
I thought I'd intervene only because to some extent feels like we're in the twilight zone in relation to this debate. But just to help and possibly to avoid further debate on this topic, I already do. So just to give that reassurance, whenever I'm looking at cancelling a meeting, I will do that in liaison with all of the group leaders to have that conversation. Clearly they may disagree, and ultimately it's my decision, as the monitoring officer's already highlighted. So by all means you could add it here, but I'm conscious that might prolong the discussion. Just to give you the reassurance that that is the approach I take.
Thank you. I'm extremely grateful for having that confirmed. Thank you.
Chair, thank you. Just to let you know that we have now reset the vote following that discussion. So if you could all place your votes again, thank you. Chair, just to clarify, you're voting to adopt the committee schedule as amended by Councillor Mellon, and for the second recommendation that the Chief Executive has the discretion with the cancellation of meetings.
Councillor Mayor, do you have a question?
I do. I'm slightly concerned that we voted on an amendment. That amendment wasn't written down anywhere. We're now voting to vote on this, including that amendment. I think there is some scope, unless it's written down, that that side of the House thinks they're voting on one part of the amendment, we think on a slightly different amendment. You know, I would like to be absolutely clear what this amendment is. Now, it might be that I'm, you know, slow and stupid. That's a distinct possibility. But, you know, I would like some clarity around exactly what we're voting on. What is this amendment in detail? What?
Okay, the monitoring officer is going to help us out here.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. And I do take Councillor Mayor's point with regards to not always having the amendment written down in the system when you're voting. The amendment that was proposed by Councillor Mellon and was then voted on by the Council was to include additional provisional Council meetings in June and in September. So effectively, October, I'm sorry. I've turned my page over, so I haven't got it right in front of me. Additional meetings in June and October. So the amended motion that you are now voting on as a substantive motion is that the draft committee timetable for 22-23 be approved with the addition of provisional council meetings in June and October. 2.2 is as published in the papers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully everyone is now clear about that? Okay. So I think the voting is open.
Yes.
Please cast your votes.
Councillor Wellham, can I take your vote, please? Councillor Richardson, have you voted?
Do I need to vote again? I voted for it twice already.
Oh, right. Well, it's saying that you haven't voted, so if you could just put it through. Chair, the voting is as 27 for and 1 against. Thank you.
Council, that's carried. So we should move on to the next item, please, which is council appointments.
There are none.
Oh, apparently there are no appointments. So at this point in time, members, I'd like to take an adjournment for, where are we? 10 minutes, well, 12 minutes until 19:30 hours. Thank you. Right, welcome back, councillors. We're now going to get back into business with item number 15 on the agenda. These are motions on notice. So we have two motions. So with the first one at 15A, this is a motion from Councillor Mansell. So I would like to ask Councillor Mansell to move her motion.
Thank you very much, Chair. As it's now over 5 years since we moved to the Cabinet model, I think that it is now time for us to review that model and that system of governance that we are using to make sure that we are offering the best service to our communities. Much has changed in the last 5 years, both nationally and locally. Babergh are already conducting their own review of the governance model of their council, and as we have the shared workforce, I think it is in the interests of our staff that we also review our governance system alongside Babergh. I'm not suggesting in any shape, way or form that one system is better than another, but I do think it is important to take some time to consider all the options that are available to us in terms of our governance model to ensure that we can continue to offer the best service. So I would urge you all to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Matheson?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to second this motion, which I think is very self-explanatory, and I'll reserve my right to have any further say till later.
Thank you, Councillor. We will now move to the debate. Councillors will be allowed to speak for 3 minutes, and this will be timed. And we will get cracking. Who would like to start? Councillor Passmore.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Always interested to hear discussions on a topic like this, governance, that word that we all love to hear. The only thing I would like to say is, though, what is the problem here we're trying to fix? Nobody would disagree, of course, with your point of view, Sarah, about serving communities. That's what we're all here to do, irrespective of what political colour we stand on. But I'm not entirely convinced of the need for doing this, because I don't actually know, if we have a review, what is the problem that we're trying to fix that people have come up with. I don't know how it would work, what would the cost be, can we fit it in, etc. And I'm not saying never ever look at this, but after only 5 years, I do wonder if it's a little premature, partly because, of course, the last 2 years, because of lockdown, has been very odd, to say the least. And I do think, personally, leaving this for a year or two as we get back to normality might be a good idea. And I do think at the moment we are still a sovereign council. We're not Babergh. Yes, we share officers. I certainly years ago was in favour of putting the two together, but that didn't work many years ago. Although there was a majority overall of voters, there wasn't a majority of sufficient size in Babergh, for example. So I'm not entirely clear that I can understand what's going on here, and I'm not sure I would actually, well, I am sure, I don't think I'll be supporting it at this stage. Thank you.
Councillor Stringer.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be brief again. I wasn't necessarily going to speak on this. This is purely just to check that we have actually got the best system. We're not saying in this motion, please go and make sure we do this or give a steer to do that. It's saying, let's have a look. It's actually been way more than 5 years since we've had the cabinet system, actually. We converted a lot longer than 5 years ago. I don't know how many years we've actually been in this building. And we converted many years before that. And we've been running was it an option 4 authority up until then. So we have had differing models, and it was just a way of, if others are already, and our staff are already going through a review process, then surely that is a really ideal time just to check that we have got the most appropriate system for the council that we have to serve our residents. Thank you, Chair.
I don't actually accept the premise that we need to consider, proceed just because Babergh is doing something. We are a sovereign council. We make our own decisions in our own way. and there is no relevance to what Babergh is up to. Personally, I think, and also, although Babergh are considering this, they have considered it, and it is coming back to Cabinet, but that's not coming back until March. So to proceed on this on the basis of what Babergh is doing is a totally flawed argument. As I say, there's no reason for us to proceed in parallel with Babergh. We can do exactly what we want. Personally, I think it would be far better to wait and do it as part of a review of the new council in the new term in a year's time. We're all far too focused on doing the best for our residents and our communities, and I'd rather not spend the time looking at this. It's not timely and it's not relevant.
Councillor Geek.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to agree with Councillor Passmore that we are indeed a sovereign council, but we also like to do things efficiently. Officers are working on this kind of thing. There's conversation in the building, research is being done and being consulted, ideas are being had. Why not capitalise on that? Why not do things in an efficient and swift manner? I also completely agree with Councillor Morley that we need to be in a position to get this done with the start of the new council, which will be after 2023. Therefore, we need to start getting going relatively soon. And although things can move efficiently here, they don't often move that fast. And so I think now is the time to be doing this, to make sure that we do it in time and for the least possible effort.
Councillor Wellham.
Thank you, Chair. That was wrong. I wasn't going to speak, but when the leader said about a better time would be with the new council, well, I think that's the worst time. I think there's a 30% changeover of membership when there is an election, and the wrong time to do it would be with 30% of the members new to the council. The best time to do it is in the final year of the council, where you've got experienced councillors who can contribute to the debate. Thank you.
Councillor Scarf.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I can't see how we could object to actually just looking into something, particularly as something's already going on with our officers at the moment. I understand I'm a member of the Constitution Review Working Group. I've been very pleased to be back on this council for 2.5 years. We've never even had a meeting. Now, whilst I accept that some working groups are there in case of or a need of a meeting should an issue come about, I think bearing in mind that there's no recommendation as to what type of model, and the Constitution Review Working Group could do their work, come back to council and say, well, we see no need to change. They could come back and say, well, we would think that you would change to Model A, Model B, or whatever. I can't really see what the objection is to actually reviewing something and looking at something. All of these things that we come here to council for, whether it be budgets, housing revenue accounts, policies, plans, we're constantly reviewing those things, quite often on a cycle of 3 years. If we haven't looked at the Constitution and whether it's fit for purpose for some considerable time, and I don't know quite how long time it is, I can't see what's the problem in actually getting the Constitution Review Working Party together and actually having a look at it. We may conclude that there's no change to be made. We may not.
If no one else wishes to speak, then I'm going to ask Councillor Mansell if he would like to eat. Sorry, Councillor Mansell.
I think, did Councillor Matheson want to come back? And then, yes, I would like to come back, but I'm not sure what's the protocol for which order. Is it Councillor Matheson first and then me?
Yes, my apologies. Councillor Matheson.
Yes, all I wanted to just to go back over the couple of criticisms and concerns there have been. Councillor Passmore asked, is there a problem to be fixed? Well, no, we're not saying there's a problem to be fixed. We're saying there's a question to be asked, that's all. And then also, yes, we agree, we're a sovereign council. We could go our own way, but in practical terms, it would be far better to work with Babergh members to have a review and then to come to hopefully the same conclusion and then to bring that back to you for a decision in due course. And I do entirely endorse Councillor Whelham's view that doing it over the coming 12 months is actually the best time, not the worst time. Thank you.
Councillor Mansell?
Thank you, Chair. I'll try not to repeat, because much of what I was going to say is very similar to what Councillor Matheson has just reiterated. But I would like to just also make the point that Councillor Morley said that she didn't think now was the time to do it because we should all be concentrating on doing the best for our residents and our communities. I'm sorry, I thought we were meant to be doing that all the time, so why not now? And again, I would just like to say, as I said for the previous motion actually, where's the harm in doing a review? We're not saying that there's a problem. We're saying that it is now time for us to review. As has been said by other members, we review a lot of other policies and procedures that we do. Why not the governance model? And in response to Councillor Passmore, who was worried about the cost of it, as I would say, if the staff are already looking into it with our Babergh members, our fellow members over at Babergh, then I would think that now is probably the most efficient time to be doing it. And I certainly agree with the comments that have been made about let's do it now so that it's there ready in place for our new council in 2023. Again, where's the harm in voting for this? All we're saying is we get the Constitution Working Group to go and have a look at it, to look at all the options there are, and there'll be a recommendation. We can't predict what that recommendation will be. All we'd say is let's go and look at it, let's look at our options, and then we'll come forward with a proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote, please.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now showing in blue. Please can you cast your vote? Councillor Whelham, can I take your vote, please? For the motion, thank you. Can I take your vote? Against. Thank you. So, Chair, that is a draw. There's 14 votes for and 14 votes against. So can I ask you if you wish to exercise your casting vote?
I do, and that will be against.
Chair, that motion is lost.
So that motion is lost.
Thank you, Chair. Shall I read out the motion and go into my speech? Is that, or do you want to take the motion as read? Or if you want to save time, I can skip it. I'll skip it and go straight to my speech. There you go.
Councillor Stringer, go straight into your speech. We've
I
all
will,
read it.
I will do that.
Super, thank you.
Brilliant. Right, first I'd like to start with a thank you. Thank you for actually all being in a room together. It feels really good to actually be here debating with you people. I'd like to also thank those councillors and officers who over recent years, on numerous occasions, pushed developers to deliver increased energy efficiencies on thousands of standard homes we've been asked to approve each year. Thank you for doing that. As energy markets go through convulsions of change, all those that benefit from the savings brought into those increased efficiencies will be able to continue to flourish because of these past endeavours. Thank you for making this effort. Every home you have better insulated is a family more likely to thrive without the fear of having to make the choice to eat or heat. But of course, it really shouldn't have to take so much effort to deliver the quality of buildings that we needed and the trade had planned for over half a decade ago. I will not rake over the coals of the bonfire regulations, but given in mid-Suffolk we have almost doubled our housing completion targets, with some house builders still paying bonuses to their chief executives of over £6,000 per house on top of their £1 million plus salary, we have an overheated housing market with some under-insulated homes. Current gas prices are over £115 per megawatt hour. New nuclear in Suffolk is guaranteed by our government at £92 per megawatt hour and rising, while solar, wind are now less than £30 per megawatt hour, energy storage coming in at around £50 per megawatt hour and falling. The future transition of energy is now crystal clear. But we need to insulate our homes not just only against the elements, but also insulate them against our economics. The best way to achieve this is by energy conservation. The better our buildings can conserve energy as well as produce it is our environmental, ethical, economic challenge as well as opportunity. I commend this motion to this council and I'll hope for your support. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Mellon?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Field would have been here to second this, but unfortunately he's not able to be here, so I'm happy to second this in his place, and I'd like to reserve my right to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So we will now move to debate on this motion. Councillors will be allowed to speak once and for 3 minutes, and that will be timed. So who would like to kick off? Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chairman. And thank you, Councillor Stringer. As you'll know, like most of us, I suspect, I also followed the COP26 summit, and I'm pleased to see that the aspirations in the government's net zero strategy. Having supported our own council's climate emergency motion, I support the approach of moving more quickly, and I do feel the general thrust of your proposal has merit. But I'm afraid I do have some thoughts about some of the specifics which I would like to share with you. The Code for Sustainable Homes was phased out several years ago, and I recall that it included various measures such as cycle storage and washing lines that weren't part of the building regulations. When that standard was phased out, the government described how they wanted to introduce the relevant measures within the code into national minimum standards, thereby negating the need for the code and to help standardise across the country and across local authorities. The government has committed to reducing carbon emissions from homes, which is what the changes to the building regs coming in from June this year are all about. The new building regulations, that is. These changes are designed to be in preparation for further reductions in emissions, which will be part of the Future Homes and Buildings Standard in 2025. I think a letter to the Minister for Housing should be more specific than simply referring to a former standard and requesting that the new 2025 standard be zero carbon for new homes. Your second point is really for our Housing and Assets Cabinet members. But I understand that their view is that it is difficult to pin our standards against something that isn't fixed, as Code 6 or equivalent, for example. The aspiration and intention behind the new design guide and specification, which is being brought to Council alongside the new Hra Business Plan later this year, is to promote sustainability and to deliver well-designed and well-built homes for our communities. The new design guide seeks to lead the way in sustainable homes setting a benchmark for the market.
Councillor, your time is almost up.
On the final limb of the motion, Council officers regularly seek to push opportunities to enhance energy performance when negotiating with developers. This is one planning consideration of many, and one which at present does not attract increased weight in the NPPF. The Suffolk Climate Emergency Plan expects all Suffolk's LPAs to develop policies that require new homes to be built in line with the 2025 Future Homes Standard, and our planners are actively looking at the steps we need to take.
Councillor
After
Byrne,
all that,
can you wrap up?
final sentence. My bottom line is that I can't support this motion as presented because all that it purports to cover and more is already work in progress in numerous ways. Work by ourselves and by other agencies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Does anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Fleming?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Councillor Stringer and Councillor Field. I know the intention behind this motion is a good one, and one which I absolutely support myself. However, I can't support your motion because, for one thing, as Councillor Byrne has said, the standard you refer to is no longer an accepted standard. It's no longer on the books. The components of this standard have been adopted into either building regulations, present or future, or planning standards. And there's no need to write to the Minister on this score. If we're advocating writing to a Minister, we need at a minimum to be specific about the problem we're trying to solve and offer some constructive suggestions as to how to solve it. The motion here doesn't solve a problem. In fact, the problem isn't encapsulated in your suggestions. And number two, I do not advocating asking Cabinet to adopt a standard for our homes that has already been fragmented in various directions. It would be a logistical nightmare. And I have had this discussion with officers. This is simply not a practical way to deal with an alleged problem. And number three, we're already doing this. There's no need for the motion. So I'm afraid I can't support your proposal, and I feel that it's redundant but well-intentioned, and I believe that going forward, the Climate Change Action Plan, as we look at it, will take into account the suggestions you've made in your paper, and we are doing all we can to make homes energy efficient and as emission efficient as possible. There is another part that you mentioned in your speech about having virtually hermetically sealed homes. And I think we need to think carefully about that too. They aren't very healthy. We need a good blast of air going through our homes, especially with COVID around. So we need to think carefully about how tightly we force our homes to be sealed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Haddingham.
Thank you. Our new design guide has sustainability at its heart in both terms of ensuring that our council homes are delivered in sustainable locations where is the most need, but also that they're designed with a fabric-first approach to reduce the need for energy consumption. Our new council housing schemes will use appropriate renewable energy resources such as air source heat pumps, solar and electric car charging points, and promote reduction in water use and encourage biodiversity to thrive. So while I don't support the details of Councillor Stringer's motion, I do support the sentiment, which is to promote sustainable homes across our districts. I therefore welcome this opportunity to talk about emerging new council house design guide and specification, which is due to be considered by this council alongside the Hra Business Plan later this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haddingham. If no one else would like a word, Councillor Warboys.
As a relatively new councillor still, I think, I've been sitting on development committees and noticed how the language on those committees has changed. It has changed because of the council's declaration of a climate emergency, the aspiration for net zero, and it has encouraged developers to come forward with schemes that are more and more in tune with the council's aspirations. But not all developers. Some developers still hang on to the present building regulations, irrespective of what changes are in the pipeline. What is the benefit of a Code 6 house? Maximum accessible provision for recycling, improved daylighting, sound insulation and security, building to the lifetime home standard, assessing and minimising the ecological impact of the construction of the house. These are quite specific things. And I think the point of this motion is that we want to accelerate the move to this standard. We want to put the pressure on the Minister to adopt these standards, and quickly. And I think that was one of the things which came out of COP26, that the time is rapidly running out to make changes. Kicking the can down the road is no longer acceptable. The point of this motion is to put pressure on to accelerate the adoption of net zero in housing development. It is to show that we are united in pushing these things forward as quickly as possible, and to really focus on how they can be included in our own design standards. I do accept that there is lots of good work going on. There is lots of joined up thinking going on throughout the council, and it is really heartwarming to be given this information in briefings. So I'd ask you to support this motion, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matheson.
Yes, Councillor Warboys has happily said much of what I wanted to say, other than the simple point that sitting on the planning committee, being unable to prevent developers from installing gas central heating, a matter of months for now before it becomes effectively obsolete, is incredibly frustrating. And I would just ask that those criticising what's been put forward as not the right words, etc., that if we gave them 5 minutes adjournment, could they perhaps come up with some amendments which would make it acceptable to them? Because we surely need to put the pressure on the government, because it's the government that are not moving fast enough to allow us to do what we need to do in the planning committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mayor.
There we are. A lot of things that we've heard I fully support.
But if I was the minister and I got a letter from our erstwhile chairman quoting an out-of-date specification, would I give it any airtime before I put it in file 13? No. This is too important not to get it right. And to ask this side of the chamber to do legwork on something that is, sorry, Andrew, I don't think it's up to scratch. And I think it would be far better to withdraw the motion, if it's possible, and come back with one that actually quotes the standards as of today, not standards that, as we've heard, are out of date.
Point of order, Chairman, if I may. Just a slight point of order.
Councillor Stringer?
The word equivalent is in there. If you wish to remove that and replace it with zero carbon, more than happy to accept that. You've had this motion tabled for over 4 months.
Councillor Passmore?
Yeah, very quickly, thank you, Chairman. Just a couple of things I'd like to mention. I agree with Roland Warboys, and I think language on planning committee has changed. I can only really speak for Committee A, but I do know under Matthew's chairmanship a lot of things have been improved. We can't undo previous permissions, we know that, but huge progress has been made. It would be good if all developers did that. But I can also say other things have happened. We haven't waited for developers. I think I could perhaps claim a little credit with some support for others. It is about better use of scarce natural resources, amongst other things, biodiversity, having small changes made, for example, to driveways where they're porous so we conserve water and so on. And we are doing a lot across party here to make improvements already. And I do think the biodiversity, I mean, we all know about hedgehogs, swift boxes. You can now get swallow cups, house martin cups, etc. We even had some, what was it, tiger crossings at one of the recent developments, which I'd never heard of before. I'm being a bit flippant there, but no, we are doing a lot there, exercise and all these sorts of things. I think there was in Elms where we had a dispute, a rather large fine oak tree. We've saved that. That was going to be butchered. Absolutely no need for that. So I would like to see things really wide-ranging, much better use of scarce natural resources. And please don't forget, all of this somehow has to be paid for, and you can look at it paying for the resources, but the long-term cost, I think we can all agree on, any damage there, but better use of scarce natural resources and biodiversity, I think is really, really important. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Passmore. Before I call Councillor Mellon, I'd like to say a few words. I think Councillor Stringer's thrust of his motion is probably not in dispute from many members in the chamber. However, the actual wording and detail of it, I think, is rather misdirected. And as someone who is on the board of the Mid-Suffolk Growth Limited Company, we as a council are actually leading in terms of the work we do in providing sustainable new homes. And Councillor Field would have been there when we actually let the keys for the first release of homes back in December, and I think he would agree with me, those were built to a very high standard. And we, as a council, have also agreed that, you know, with our own council stock, existing stock, that we're going to work very hard to improve the energy efficiencies of those houses as well. So I think there is no doubt that at all about the commitment of the council towards more energy efficient homes, more sustainable living, and it's witnessed by the biodiversity and the declaration of a climate emergency. So I think on many different levels, this council is already doing this stuff. And I don't actually see the point of this motion. So I shall not be supporting it. Councillor Mellon.
Yeah, thank you, Chair.
I'm sorry, Councillor, please.
Sorry, Chair, I did have my arm up, but I think it was while you were speaking, so you're probably preoccupied. I just wanted to make the point that in 2007, this council built some exemplar, very low energy, highly environmentally efficient buildings. We built a small group of buildings in a estate in Elmswell, which permission for that was given in about 2005. 2005, that's 17 years ago. We were able then to build do buildings like that, but we seem not able to do it, have been able to do it since then. So it's a shame that, you know, as Councillor Stringer has said, this motion, you know, would have been heard originally in November, at the November meeting. So you've all had it since the beginning of November, in fact, and it would have been great to get together or to have somebody to come to Councillor Stringer and say, how can we do this, improve this? If you're going to put this forward again, what can we be doing? That would be fantastic, you know, and I think, you know, it would have been a great piece of joint working. And so given that we have been able to build and do highly energy efficient buildings in the past, it's a long, long time ago. And at the time also they won a RBA award, with first one in this district. So it would be great if we could all get together and repeat that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mellon. Councillor Pratt.
Yeah, I think, colleagues, that it would be a real shame to vote against any motion that tries to help us to raise standards in energy efficiency in homes. I think that we should be using this opportunity to triangulate our efforts to raise these energy efficiencies. Now, I know that the argument's been put forward that Code 6 is redundant, but it encapsulates the multifaceted sort of topic that it is. It's not just about renewables, it's not just about insulation, it's also about the fabric of the buildings themselves, the materials. And it's also giving us the opportunity to be creative, because the wording says Code 6 or equivalent. So I think that a better way round this would have been to have put an amendment forward that improves the motion rather than disregarding it altogether. I might also add that whilst I acknowledge that we're doing excellent work as a council through the many different task and finishing groups and working with partners, in the last few years that I've been a councillor, I haven't always been really impressed with the developments that have been permitted in my ward in terms of the kind of backwards design of them. They're not exactly exemplary. Still using lots of concrete, which emits lots of CO2. You know, we're just trying to push innovation, really, aren't we? And go a little bit beyond what we're being asked to do by the government, which is exactly what we should do. Thank you.
Councillor Geek.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to draw Councillors' attention, you probably already know this, but data published in The Guardian today from Climate Emergency UK with a checklist of ideas from a checklist of criteria for district councils, unitary authorities, etc., county councils as well. Shows that Mid-Suffolk has a score of 58%. For comparison, the County Council, Suffolk County Council, got 54%, West Suffolk Council got 65%. Now, I can leave you all to go and look at the criteria, but we score highly on mitigation and adaptation. We score highly on measures to tackle the biodiversity crisis, so that's all those Swift boxes and house martin cups and so on. But we do worse than average for measuring and setting emissions targets. That's the thing that we really need to get better at. And this will help us to get our targets up. This will help us to be seen as the greenest county, and it will help us to catch up with West Suffolk. I'm sure nobody wants to be behind West Suffolk. Thank you.
Councillor Carter.
Thank you. And I am heartened to hear that we all agree that we want to move in the right direction. We want to be improving. We want to be the greenest county. But I have sat in many a meeting, a planning meeting, I'm sure we all have, where we've been told we haven't got a planning reason to go against or to advise to improve upon because it's government legislation. We've all sat through meetings where officers have said, we haven't got a reason to suggest this. We haven't got a reason to go further. Well, this is just, we could work together in suggesting, trying to push for forwards quicker together. We've all had this for 4 months where we could easily work together as a council, not just separate sides, but say, this is the direction we're moving in, wonderful. We can do this faster, we can do this quicker, and we can actually write and actually show our residents that this is something that we care deeply enough to actually push government for. We are not just sitting behind lines that are drawn somewhere else by sand. We want to change those lines. We want to be at the forefront. And I can't see any downside in working together as a council and just saying to people, saying to government, we need to do better. If anything, it makes us look stronger if we work together. So, thank you.
Right, if no one else wishes to speak, I'll call on Councillor Mellon.
Thank you, Chair. Clearly, I'm not Councillor Field, and I don't have either his experience or his eloquence, but I will just say a few things in support of this motion. And I think there's broad agreement in this chamber about where we need to go with this subject. We can all agree that there's a need to raise build standards, and not least because of the recent massive rises in energy costs. We know that a well-built, well-insulated home is going to cost residents much less to heat. And we do see some very good work going on in the planning committees, pressing developers to reach the highest standards that we can make them do. It doesn't seem to me that this motion unduly binds the council's hands. It is really a kind of steer in terms of pushing further in this direction. We did bring this motion forward for the November meeting, which was just after the COP meeting, and perhaps would have hit the spot a bit better then. And I obviously realise that the government has since then announced it's going to roll out some higher building standards, building regulations in, I think it's June this year. And we will welcome those. We'll welcome those things. Just a couple of words on Code 6. Code 6 became advisory. It didn't go away. It became advisory. But it's still there, and it's well known and it's understood in the sustainable building industry as a kind of gold standard that we should be trying to achieve. Now, other places talk about passive house and that sort of thing, but I think the Code 6 or its equivalent is a very good standard to be aiming for. We do want to be providing 21st century homes. The standards that we have at the moment, a bit like our housing delivery numbers, they are not a ceiling. We can go further and we can go faster. On the first point of the motion, the chairman of the council will write to the minister. I saw the chairman's last letter. He writes a good letter, I have to say. And I'm sorry that he didn't receive a response from that. But I think expressing our views in that way is just one of the handles we have to, one of the levers we can pull on to try and get movement quicker. The second point is not for us to decide, it's the Cabinet. We know that the Cabinet has the power to make those decisions. And all we're simply asking is for the Cabinet to consider that. It doesn't particularly, to me, seem very onerous. And then the third one is the council officers. And as people have said, you know, the council officers are asking developers to do these things.
If you could begin to wrap up.
But to me, that third point would give those officers an encouragement, which I think would be very worthwhile. So I do commend this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stringer, do you wish to add anything?
Oh, yes, I do, Chair. Yeah. Thank you, and thank you for all the contributions today. I have to say, a little disappointed that over the months nobody's sought to amend this, because it is well meant. And the reason for choosing Code 6 equivalent is because that's what the trade understands. That's what the layperson understands within this sustainability language. But that could have been amended, could be even amended after I speak now, but I fear it won't. The biggest issue is In between us originally tabling this motion, this council has approved over 400 new dwellings. In between today and the legislation coming out in June, which will be the earliest, no doubt it will probably slip, as many of these do, we've got timetabled over 650 homes to be approved by this council in the next 4 weeks. So those 650 homes will be at the whim of the bog standard regulations we have at the moment and up to the individual endeavours of the individual councillors on those committees coming up against current government policy. That is what that motion seeks to do, to give those councillors the confidence that they have a council behind them in trying to get to those standards, and it instructs the Cabinet to consider it, and to actually say to our officers, you've got the free hand to go and negotiate. It's about that period of time between today and the legislation coming out. For those 651 houses, I will be voting for this motion. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will now ask the Corporate Manager, Governance and Civic Office to conduct the electronic vote.
Thank you, Chair. That vote is now showing in blue if councillors would like to cast their vote. Thank you. Councillor Wellham, can I take your vote, please? Thank you. Councillor Geek, are you having problems voting?
I'm having problems, but they're being sorted out.
Lovely, thank you. And Councillor Otten, are you having... Oh, she's left. Okay. Right, I didn't realise that. Okay. Chair, the votes are 13 for the motion and 14 against. So the motion is lost.
So that motion is lost, and the
Chair, just before the closed meeting, can I just remind councillors that when they go out of the car park tonight, it is going to be closed, the shutters will be down, but can you make sure you drive